So let's have a look about apnea and what are the basics that we need to know before we start to go in the water. A few things that will help us to understand what happens in our body and why we should do in a way instead of another. The air that we breathe is composed from 78% of nitrogen, roughly, 21% of oxygen, and 1% of other gases, of which 0.04% today is of CO2. We use, with all these gases, we use for our life only oxygen, and we produce CO2 through our breathing chemistry in the body. The concentration of oxygen in our system is around 21%. If the oxygen concentration drop below 10%, our body go in a state called hypoxia. So mean that doesn't have enough oxygen to maintain the vital function and will switch off. So we'll go in something called syncope. Syncope is basically the safety mechanism for the body to save energy. It's like when your computer have no battery left and all of a sudden, bling bling, poof, go to sleep. It's exactly the same thing. So the oxygen that we consume is going to be replaced in our breathing with CO2. So CO2 at a concentration already of 7% will start to give us this air hunger feeling. So you start to crave for fresh air. It is what happens when you keep your breath and then you start to feel a sort of contraction, and it's your body that is telling you, hey, the CO2 is too high, please ventilate, empty your lungs and get fresh air inside. When this limit reach around 8%, that is where the real contractions start to kick in. So because CO2 start to be dangerous for your system, too much CO2, so your body will start really to force ventilation. So you start to get contractions down here in the diaphragm. You start to, and it's very annoying. It can also be pretty painful. Now, some people is more or less sensible to these contractions, get them a bit earlier and a bit later, but still are there, and we need to start to learn to control the contractions. But basically, as soon as you start, as a beginner Spiro, as soon as you start to feel these feelings, this contraction, just drop, come up. So it's the basic safety rule. First contraction, ears up. Second contraction, you drop. Never mind how big is the fish, you just come up and ventilate. That is my little safety advice. The reason is that because 10-11% of CO2 content in the blood, you basically switch off to reduce the increase of this CO2. Now, the syncope, while the syncope for excessive CO2 is easily preventable. I mean that you start to get this contraction and you cannot really ignore them, and it's a big alarm bell that you get. So you can't really ignore it. So you know that it's coming. You have all the time to come up and breathe. The problem is the blackout that happen when you have too few oxygen instead. And this is why you never, ever, ever hyperventilate before you make a dive. Hyperventilation means that you breathe this forced, rapid and deep breathing, like if you already now look, start to get head spinning. If you do it for a while, 30 seconds, you start really your head spinning. And this is because it's not that you increase the level of oxygen, you cannot get more than 21%, but you just empty the CO2. So you ventilate out the CO2 content. So probably, if I have time to edit, I will put a chart down here. But basically, you see that normally the CO2 is here and the oxygen is here. So let's say start at this and they go like this. So the CO2 increase with time and the oxygen reduce. When the CO2 reach the famous 8%, I start to get contractions. So my hunger of air kick in, I get the alarm bell, I have time to come up, and the oxygen is still in a good, safe level. But what happens if I reduce my CO2? At the start, the CO2 will not reach the 8% before that the oxygen has gone below the syncope level, which is 10%. So if I hyperventilate, I just switch off the alarm, which is actually pretty stupid. So never ever hyperventilate, because the risk is that you don't feel this craving for air, your oxygen will drop below 10%, and you just switch off, and then you're done. So hyperventilation is a no-go at all. Now, I'm not speaking about professional freedivers or people that make agonistic performances. That's a complete different story. Now we're speaking about us normal people that we like to go spearfishing and we want to make it in total safety, and we want to know what the heck is going on in our system. The factors that are going to affect our apnea are basically the physical activity. So more you move, more oxygen you use, more you are in a state of anxiety, more your heartbeat go up and you actually use more oxygen, and more, of course, deeper you go, more oxygen you consume and more CO2 you produce. So this is the three factors. The important thing before you make any dive is just to have a proper rest in the surface. You ventilate, you breathe calmly, you breathe relaxing. The point to have a good apnea and to enjoy the bottom time, never mind how deep you go, even if it's only 2 meters, is to be able to relax. You feel your heartbeat going down when you feel calm and nice. Then you take your duck dive, we will see next time, and you go to the bottom, you relax, you're calm, you don't stress your movements, you don't push too much, and you will have a very, very nice experience at the bottom of the sea. So what happens when we dive? When we dive, we go from, let's say we go down to 10 meters, to make an example. We go from the surface with our air in the lungs, average around 3 liters for normal persons. So you start from 3 liters of air in the lungs, you go down to 10 meters. The pressure has increased of 1 bar, so has doubled, mean that the volume of air in your lungs is going to be squeezed from 3 liters to 1.5 liters. Now, our body have a very, very interesting mechanism to avoid be squashed to nothingness like a cucaracha from the water pressure. So what we do, basically our lungs, they're going to be flooded inside with blood. Yes, they're going to fill up with blood. So all the blood that is going to be squeezed from our legs, our arm, all our body that is squeezed like a lemon, all the blood will fill up our lungs. So we'll compensate the internal pressure and we'll avoid, because the blood of course is a liquid, so not compressible, we'll avoid our rib cage to be smashed in like a flatfish. This effect is called blood shift. Now the blood shift is going to be important when we start to go pretty deep. Deep mean 30-40 meters down, but it's something that you don't consider at the moment, because we are speaking about diving maximum 10-15 meters in the beginning. Shallow water blackout. You maybe have heard about it a few times. Well, that has something to do with the boil lows. Now we are not going in deep there, but it's something to do with the concentration of the gas, of the oxygen in our body. So it's a partial pressure phenomena. So let's not go too deep there, but basically what happens is that if you go to the bottom, the pressure squeeze the gas inside your system, so the partial pressure will be higher. If you abuse that bottom time and that less craving of air that you have when you go very deep, you will basically pay this price in the moment you are in the last meter, when the gas expand, the concentration of the oxygen in our system drop because this expansion, and you just black out. So as a first rule, that's why I told you before, when you get the first contractions, you come up. This is the safe method to avoid shallow water blackout. So after the dive, we need to have time to recover, mean to let our body to expel all the CO2 that we have accumulated in our blood, in our system, and it doesn't happen in a few seconds, so it roughly takes a couple of minutes. So the standard mind calculation that you do is that for every minute that you take underwater, you wait 2 minutes in the surface. So, if you take a dive of 30 seconds, you wait for 1 minute. If you take a dive of 2 minutes in the bottom, you wait 4 minutes in the surface. So, more or less, you stay on the surface and breathe at least double than the time you spent underwater. And you will see, especially in the beginning, that even if you wait some minutes more, just to get time to relax, to get your heartbeat to slow down and be in a good condition, your next dive would be much better. So I hope it's everything for today, and if you have any question, just send an email, a message, and telephone call, whatever. See you next. Ciao.